What is going on, Babylonians? It's me, Songs of Rage, back with another Outriders video to bring to you, and today we're going to be looking over the Plague Sowers set. And is there a viability for it? Is there a place for it in the current game? And because obviously now we don't have timers to worry about, we don't need to worry about the additional damage benefits, that purely Borealis is just the only way to go forward. So can we use something that just offers damage reduction? Can we use it for the survivability that we need? For the timers to be able to obviously complete the expeditions. And I do think there is a place for it. I don't think it's very competitive. I don't think it's the main way to go forward, but it definitely has something to offer. And I do think it needs some kind of buff in the future patch. But for the time being, this is all we've got to be able to play with. So here's my rendition, here's my version of a Plague Sowers Witch Doctor set, and let's get right into it. Alright then, so we just finished a Scorched Lands, and I was very impressed with the run. It feels a little lackluster when it comes to just pure raw damage output, but it more than makes up for it in survivability, more than makes up for it in utility, and do you know what? Overall, I'm very pleased with how it kind of went. So let's have a quick look into the gear, let's have a look into the stats, and let's break it all down for you. So if we go into the inventory, you'll see that I am rocking a funeral pyre, but please ignore that because I didn't have to swap to that one single time. That was just purely there, just a make or break, just in case I needed something a bit more. But actually, you don't even need that. So, you know, feel free to use a secondary for whatever you want really there. So the main gun we're using is the Lucky Jinx, and the reason why we're using the Lucky Jinx is one, because it is rolling with crit damage, which is absolutely perfect for a Technomancer, but also because it has the standard perk of a tier 3 ultimate toxic bullet. Now the reason why we've gone for that is because if there's ever a chance that your blighted rounds do fall off, and trust me, there are times where that actually will happen if you're not careful, then at least you actually have a gun that's still able to inflict toxic, which then pairs really nicely with obviously the main reason why we're using this, which is the Plague Sowers set. It also activates all of your multipliers as well, so you are still able to do some damage, and it just allows you to, you know, keep the uptime while your cooldown is refreshing. So I've also paired it with Fortress, and the reason why I've paired it with Fortress instead of Dark Sacrifice is while Dark Sacrifice does give you a very nice damage output, obviously, you know, it's the main way for a Technomancer to be able to deal a lot of damage. It consistently slowly drains away your health, and that goes against everything that what the Plague Sower set is trying to do. So I don't think it's the best way to be able to go for it. By all means, go for it if you would like to give it a go. Feel free to try it out and all that kind of thing. But I feel like the fact it's trying to kill you, and the fact we're trying to stay alive so much, just really compounds, and just it does not work. It just kind of clashes with the initial idea as to what the two are supposed to be doing. So I've gone for Fortress because shots increase our current armor and resistance by 5%, stacking up to 3 times. So obviously we can get a nice 15% armor and a nice 15% resistance. And then when we get to those 3 stacks, the buff is doubled, so we get all of a sudden we're up to 30%, and it also gives us an extra 30% damage. So we are still dealing additional damage, and it also makes us more, it gives us more survivability, which is very nice. So I'm very happy with how that currently works, and you kind of do miss a little bit of the damage, but the survivability more than makes up for it. So if we go from there over to obviously the gear set, now you can see that we've gone for a 3-piece of the Plague Sowers, which is the head, the gloves, and the boots. And the reason why I've gone for those ones is going to become apparent very shortly, but there's one mod between the two when it comes to the chest and when it comes to the feet that I'm not too I'm kind of torn between, but it's not my personal my personal preference is how I've currently got it set up, but I understand that some people may go the other way. So just to give you an idea, the chest does roll with to the bone, which gives you anomaly power every single time you activate it, which is absolutely pointless, which means that by the time you've replaced that, it means the tier 2 mod of giving you a second mag for your blighted rounds is available. And you can't change that one off. Now, I personally don't like the idea of having a second mag of Blighted Rounds. While Blighted Rounds is a great skill, I've just never got to grips ever since, within the first couple of weeks of the game, after I realised that there's a way to be able to consistently keep your magazine filled. So why do I need a second mag? You know, that's going to be purely a dead mod if I'm doing my build correctly. So, you know, by all means, if you're more comfortable with that, that's definitely better than the Enriched Anthrax, which I've currently got on the boots. And I'm personally not happy with having that either on there, but I preferred having my turret do a little bit more damage while it's generating aggro over having a second mag that I'm never really going to use. So it is a personal preference, but you know, I'll leave that choice up to you. So if we go into the head, let's get into it quickly. So bonus firepower, cooldown reduction, close range damage. Now that's the standard of what rolls on the Plague Sower skull. It goes for splash boost, and this is probably the most important mod when it comes to this whole build, because it increases our splash effect radius of the successful shots by 50%. Now, if you don't quite know what the splash, what it's talking about when it says successful shots and the splash effect radius, basically every single time you have blighted rounds, when you hit an enemy, it will branch off slightly and it will deal so much damage to nearby enemies, similar to like a damage link in a way, but it's already automatically built into the rounds. So what this will do is it will increase that radius, so how far it can affect how far another enemy has to be close to be able to get that bonus, by another 50%, which is huge. And it also will have applied toxic as well, which means that we're going to be spreading out all that toxic, all that good stuff, basically everything for what this build is designed for, so much easier. So it's basically a standard for me. That one has to be on this build, and it just makes it so much easier to be able to inflict toxic, just what we wanted to be able to do. I've replaced the tier 2 mod, well, the second mod that was on here for Breathe In, for the fixing wave for reducing the skills cooldown by 20%. Now, the reason why we've done that will become a bit more apparent a little bit later on. So just know that we kind of do need this on this build, at least how I've currently rocked it. So we'll get into the next ones, and then I'll explain why that's needed. So I've gone for a purple chest, and like I said, you can feel free to swap this out for the Plague Sower's chest. But I've gone for Captain Hunter, so we increase our damage to elites by 25%, which is very, very nice. Kind of do need that for the lower amount of damage that we are dealing compared to normal firepower builds. And we've also gone for Damage Absorber, which increases our armor by 52,000 and our resistance by 10%. So I do think that Damage Absorber really does help out with the Plague Sowers, because we're already boosting our armor up to a certain value that we're able to absorb, you know, quite a bit of. I mean, our current damage reduction is 67.6%, which is very, very nice. And then by the time we've inflicted toxic a few times, we can see that go, you know, a lot higher, which is very, very nice. The reason why I've gone for Captain Hunter over anything else is because it really will help out in certain situations. The elites are basically the main reason as to why we struggle with this build at the moment. You can still get through them, don't get me wrong. It's not like you can't get through them whatsoever. It just will take a little bit of time, and Captain Hunter just makes it a little bit easier. We've gone for firepower, cooldown reduction, and long range damage. Long range damage doesn't really factor in too much when it comes to this build. So technically your best kind of role for that instead is take out the long range damage and swap that out for either a close range damage or a status power. Now the close range damage, because we're able to deal so much damage at range, most of the time, especially elites, will actually get up close, and you'll see that in the gameplay in the background, that, you know, you're pretty much going to be face to face with these enemies with how much damage resistance you're going to have, but just purely for the fact that the damage output isn't quite there compared to like some other Technomancer builds, so therefore, you know, you might as well have a close range one built in instead. So if we go from there over to our trousers, these are my trusty trousers that I pretty much always use, which is firepower, long range damage, and cooldown reduction. I quite happily swap out that long range for a close range damage, like I said for the previous chest. But what we've gone for from the mods here is Quartermaster, and the reason why we've gone for that is because this is the main way to be able to refill our magazine on the Lucky Jinx. Now, the Lucky Jinx does pack 120 rounds because of our skill tree, so therefore, you know, we've got a lot of rounds to be able to play with, we've got a lot of firepower coming out, but it also does go through it quite quickly at the same time. So the reason why we've gone for Quartermaster is because we're doing it on the lower side of damage, so therefore I can't trust mods like Toxic Lead, I can't trust things like Trick Up the Sleeve to be able to refill my ammo, especially when it comes to certain enemies, so therefore I have to have something that I can control that will refill the magazine. So Fixing Wave and Quartermaster do a great job of that, especially now with the buff to Quartermaster being onto the 1 second, so pretty much always whenever you've got your Fixing Wave back. So that's why I've gone for that. There will be a couple of times where if you're firing the gun like full auto, you're just holding down the trigger, you will expend all your ammo before the cooldown is done. So you do need to be a little bit mindful when it comes to your ammo on inside the actual magazine, because as soon as you expend it all, that means then you obviously got to wait for the cooldown for blighted rounds. So while it's not like the end of the world or anything like that, it does actually kind of like contribute to quite a lot of your damage output. So therefore, you know, it's best to be able to, you know, just manage it a little bit, spray a couple of things here, you know, just take a little bit of a break, fall back on your turret a little bit to generate a little bit of aggro, and then make sure that you get down to around about 10 rounds or less, pop your quartermaster, and then you're good to go again. On top of that, we've also gone for Radical Therapy, so we deal 15% more damage to enemies inflicted by Toxic. The whole build is dedicated to inflicting as much Toxic as possible. It makes sense to be able to put something like that on there, just to be able to, you know, give you some kind of damage output. If we go from there to the gloves, we've gone for Euthanizer, which is pretty much standard on these gloves. So therefore we are dealing another 25%, which brings it up to 40% just purely based on mods in our armor to enemies inflicted by Toxic. And we've also gone for the Cycle, and I love this mod, especially when paired with Fixing Wave and the Fixer Upper mod, which we're going to be seeing very, very shortly. You know, just a bit of the spoilers for what's going to be showing on the boot. But yeah, increasing your weapon damage by 50% when every single time we pop Fixing Wave for 8 seconds is huge, and I do think that this really helps to be able to give a little bit of a damage output for this current build. So therefore, it is a very good idea to be able to, you know, keep yourself alive, keep obviously your magazine topped up, and then also have some extra weapon damage on top of that, just so you've got some kind of offensive ability as well. And I just think that the whole build just really complements it as well. If we go from there to the boots, and like I said, we're just going to spoil it, there is a Fixer Up on there to be able to increase our health regen by 5% and max health for ourselves and our allies for 8 seconds, and that obviously is what contributes to the cycle. And then on top of that, we've gone for Enriched Anthrax. Like I said, I'm not a massive fan of this mod because the Blighted Turret is just kind of a letdown for me. I don't think it's accurate enough, I don't think it does a good enough job, but having it do more damage was preferable to me to having a second mag. So I'm more than happy to have something like that. So that pretty much wraps up the build. So if we go from there over to the skills, we've gone for Blighted Turret, we've gone for Blighted Rounds, we've gone for Fixing Wave. Like I said, I would love to be able to get this down a little bit, you know, a little bit lower if I could, but unfortunately it just doesn't allow me to. And the Blighted Rounds and Blighted Turret are kind of on smaller cooldowns, just purely based on the skill tree we've gone for. So if we have a look at the skill tree and the breakdown for that, we've gone for top tree because we are looking to be able to do firepower, but also because this allows us to be able to do more stuff with our Toxic. So I've gone for that. I've gone for Sower of Decay just because there are times where our Blighted Rounds will run out, and that 15% could be huge. I think it works out to be around about 5, 6, maybe even 7 seconds of cooldown just shaved off just purely for that one mod. So it's definitely worthwhile picking up. We've also gone for Exposing Toxin because we are inflicting a lot of Toxic, so therefore, you know, having Vulnerable on pretty much every single enemy that you can pretty much see is definitely huge. And then we've gone all here, we've picked up Purge because Purge allows us to be able to do more damage to enemies inflicted with Toxic. Everything to do with Assault because that's the main gun that we are planning to use. We've grabbed Two Sides of Power because we do have a lot of ways to be able to increase our damage resistance, so we don't have to worry. It basically gets rid of the negative for what Two Sides of the Power it pretty much offers to you. So it's almost like you're dealing an extra 20% damage just with no real downside. So overall, that's a very good mod to be able to pick up. And obviously, we've gone for the Capstone to be able to increase our weapon damage every time we activate Blighted Rounds or the Blighted Turret. On top of that, we've also gone down the middle, and we also wanted to grab Wipeout. Now, Wipeout is there to be able to help out, give us another damage multiplier for when enemies get below a certain threshold, and I do love how Wipeout works. I do think Wipeout would be probably always picked up if it was ever swapped over with Blur Screen, but Wipeout, yeah, it's one of my favourite things to be able to pick up in the skill tree, and it really does help out with just finishing any of those enemies off. So that pretty much wraps up everything that the Witch Doctor build that I'm bringing to you can pretty much do. Now overall, it was a very enjoyable experience. I do wish it had a little bit more damage of it, like output when it came down to it. But by the time you've chucked out that turret, by the time you've activated your Fixing Wave, you are seeing crits with a gun that's not necessarily benefiting from long range damage or anything like that, in excess of around about 120k, and the rate of fire that it has on it just really does help it out. So it is able to make its way through pretty much every like solo content by itself. I wouldn't recommend either Storm with this whatsoever. I just don't, there's not enough enemies to be able to inflict Toxic to be able to benefit from the set bonus, so you're better off with using something like Borealis to be able to get that extra frozen damage. Overall, I hope you've enjoyed. Like I said, it was a bit of a challenge, but overall, it was a good challenge, and it was something that was definitely doable. It's something that's a bit different that's available out there, so feel free to pick this up. Like I said, it does actually benefit yourself as well as teammates, which is very, very nice. So it does make it kind of a more of like a tanky support role alongside pretty much any other class that you run, and it does help out a little bit more with firepowers, and it will help out other firepower technomancers as well. So you know, it's not a bad build to be able to, you know, just experiment around with. So let us know if there was anything you would like to change in the comment section down below. I'd be very interested to see what else you would like to be able to see. Maybe you'd go a different route, and I'm all ears, and I'd love to be able to hear all of those down in the comments section. So massive thank you to yourself for making this far. A massive thank you to the Babylonian family as always. Their support really is definitely appreciated, and they get their names at the end of every single video. If you would like to get your name up on the end of every single video, find that join button that's right next to that subscribe button. Click on that, and it is as little as 99p a month, and every single penny of that goes straight back into the channel, and it really does help out the channel a lot. So massive thank you to everyone as always, and that just leaves me to say, keep yourself safe, keep yourselves well, and I'll see you all on that next video.